What's going on, Hawks fans? It's Atlanta Basketball with Caleb Johnson, episode 4. Still very new to this sort of thing, so still kind of figuring my way about all of this, but happy October to you all. So I know it's spooky season, right? Halloween, all of those sorts of exciting things. My wife actually, while I'm recording this, is watching a Halloween movie right now, but for those of us who are basketball fans, it is basketball season. It's that month. We know that the Hawks are getting ready very soon to play a preseason game, and then it'll be a little like a week from then. The actual NBA basketball will be getting played. It is right around the corner. This has been a fun week because it's been training camp for the Atlanta Hawks, who are after media day. After we talked last, we're talking about the excitement of what could be, what potentially is going to play out. At that point on Monday, the whole team hadn't been together all at the same time to work out yet. So it was all about the potential of things and unsure how it all is going to work on the floor. But now we've had a few days of training camp that guys can acclimate themselves together. And one thing we're definitely going to talk about in this podcast is what some of these new guys have to say about Trae Young, because I think there is this perception about Trae on the outside, and then it feels like not anything necessarily new, but when guys get to play with Trae, it's like, oh, I didn't expect this. And so we'll certainly talk about over the course of the podcast what some of these new guys have to say about playing with Trae. Also, we'll get into Quin Snyder and what he had to say about some of these new guys, and maybe a bit of a load that will be lifted off of Trae Young and carried by some of these other new pieces that the Hawks and Hawks GM Asa Newell has added to this team. But I want to start off by talking about someone that I really feel like haven't spent too much time discussing, which is Asa Newell. Obviously, this is a guy that the Hawks are excited about more so as a developmental piece right now, but certainly just kind of seeing what he can add to this team right now. I know after talking with Asa this past week at training camp, kind of different from media day, because media day for Asa was very much, still like I said, the potential, the excitement of what could be and how everything is going to look. But I think now that Asa has spent some time getting to play with the team, kind of, getting through those physical workouts, seeing the difference in the NBA and college. And not to say that he didn't get some of that in summer league, but summer league still is, guys trying to make the roster and then guys who are still new to the league. And so really kind of getting that first taste this week of training camp of the, NBA style and all of those sorts of things. I think there have certainly been, like Coach Snyder and some of these players who have been impressed by Asa, someone who comes in as the 23rd pick in the NBA draft, as someone that the Hawks were able to get while also getting assets. Of course, as it's been thoroughly discussed that Ansi was able to trade with the New Orleans Pelicans as they wanted to slide up 10 spots. So the Hawks get the best of the Pelicans or the Bucks first round pick next year, but also get a talented player in Asa Newell out of Georgia, kind of coming at a crazy time with the Falcons draft Jalen Walker out of Georgia, and then the Hawks draft someone out of Georgia. So with all of that excitement about, his past, then you get the player who comes in right now, who you might forget about small little details, or just not know about small little details about Asa Newell, what he brought to the Georgia Bulldogs, as he was someone who, kind of played a bit of an undersized 5 role for Mike White's Georgia Bulldogs, but comes into the Hawks looking to play more of a power forward role, and is someone who is a lefty. And I think sometimes you know how that impacts football. And I mean, if you're a Falcons fan at all and know about Michael Penix Jr. and the fact that he is a lefty who throws the ball, and so wide receivers have to learn him in a different way. Well, for Asa Newell, the spin on his passes are different, and the hand that he uses to switch off if he's running in a pick and roll type situation, and which side he favors. All of those sorts of things are different because he is a lefty. And Quin Snyder actually talked about the fact that he coached a guy in Mike Conley who was ambidextrous, and so it kind of depended on what he was doing as to what hand he used. And from my understanding with Asa Newell and what I've seen, I actually posted a video on my Twitter page talking about the new flags that were added to the Hawks training staff. In that video, you see Asa Newell shooting a three. He's shooting it with his left hand. But something that Quin Snyder was quick to to make sure to emphasize is that Asa is actually really good with both hands when attacking the basket. And so it's not something that he's kind of it's not a Jaylen Brown situation where he's stuck going right and can't go left, or vice versa, only goes left and can't go right, that sort of thing. But just one of those kind of interesting little details that you learn about a young guy entering his first NBA season is he's a lefty. And so while Quin Snyder was also quick to say, hey, he's a rookie and he's a developmental piece, and so it's not like we're running a whole lot of sets through him right now, especially as training camp starts. It's just one of those things to kind of, just a little nugget to tuck away for later and to see how it potentially could come into play, or make a difference or not make a difference. But I think the one thing about Asa is, just from a media perspective, something that may not matter is I think he just has a really positive energy about himself. The guy is just always smiling, and I think as Hawks media, me and the others who cover the team have kind of been spoiled because this is kind of 2 years in a row where you came off of Zachary Riza-Shea, who very smiley and a bubbly kind of personality. Not to say that Kobe before him, wasn't a happy guy or whatever, but he was more reserved and kind of quiet. But you've now got two guys in a row, and more specifically with Asa, who just seem to do really well at finding the positives in life and in the game of basketball and all of those sorts of things. And so just one of those kind of interesting nuggets that you take away. But that Asa certainly in his development is having to pick up things really quickly. One aspect of the game that I found was really interesting for Asa is him talking about the transition from college to the NBA, and specifically how the training camp process goes. Because in college you have a significant more amount of time to get to know your teammates than you do in the NBA. And so I wanted to play a clip of Asa just kind of talking about that transition and how different it truly is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how much time we have on court. I mean, we only have a week until our first preseason game, and I was talking to the guys, like, it's nothing like college because you have the whole summer, you're doing boot camp, you're flipping tires, you're getting out there on the track, and here it's just you either got it or you don't. So.
As much as there is, this training camp period, and as much as getting in the gym is an important aspect of the NBA and of these guys developing as players, it's kind of, interesting that Ace is talking about, yeah, we're, at Georgia, we're flipping tires and we're going through a big boot camp together. It seems like in the NBA, it's more of like, it's on you as a player to go focus on your body, get in the gym, get in the training aspect of that game. And then when it's time where it's mandatory for us to all be together, we got a lot of things that, moving parts that we're working on, that we're getting going. I did think it was interesting. Trae Young made sure to give Asa a shout out in that he was able to poke the ball away from Trae when they were running a specific set. And so it was kind of interesting to see of like, okay, so the young guy is finding his footing, having a cool moment, because as we learned from Asa early in the process of when right after he was drafted by the Hawks, he grew up a Hawks fan, being somewhat local to the area. And Kyle Korver was a big, kind of a guy he looked up to as an athlete, a guy he had Kyle Korver's jersey. The same was true for Trae Young as someone that he's looked up to. And so it was cool to hear Asa kind of talk about that transition of going from looking up to a player to actually getting to play with him, and then to kind of be able to poke the ball away and make him lose it, even if it is in a training camp situation where there's a lot of chaos and different things that can happen in that aspect. Just a kind of fun thing for the young guy as he continues to develop. As we kind of continue with this conversation about training camp, I want to get into what has been interesting to see with the new guys, because spent some time talking about them already, and about on paper what they can bring. But I found it interesting what they once introduced to the team and actually getting to go through some practices, what they've been able to take away from all of this process. I'll start with Kristaps Porzingis, who has kind of been on a whirlwind in the last couple of days. He had some issues apparently getting a flight, I believe, from Latvia, where he's from, in order to get to Atlanta. And so Monday, the day of media day, he had arrived to Atlanta just a couple hours before going to media day and going through the process. And I think sometimes people may not realize, our players just showing up and talking to, all of us media and then going home. No, they have a long day of taking 9 million photos, doing video promos. The Hawk social media is taking them through of, hey, answer this question, hey, answer that question, do this little cutesy, funny video sort of thing. All of that, all of the promotions. Anytime when you go to a game and you see the brackets play out, this is the time in which that takes place. And so for Kristaps to go from being on a long flight, on the other side of the globe, to get here, answering questions with the media, meeting his teammates, a lot of them for the first time, and then waking up the next day, hey, it's training camp. And while the media is allowed to one session a day, the Hawks are practicing twice a day on Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it's got to be a pretty strenuous process for a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, who did tell us on media day that he felt really good, and that getting to play in Eurobasket and get his confidence back from the injuries that he experienced at the end of the season for the Celtics, but also that viral illness that he dealt with. All of that, getting his wind out, back underneath him. Is it getting your legs underneath you, but getting your wind back and getting more condition and all that sort of thing. He was able to do in Eurobasket, so that when he hit training camp this week, he wasn't as behind as he potentially could have been. But the first thing that Kristaps Porzingis was quick to talk about is loving Quin Snyder's the offense that he runs, the freedom that is allowed, because Quin even spoke about this random basketball, read-based offense that he likes to run. And so Porzingis was quick to compliment the quick pace that this team plays in, and how Quin wants them to play. The fact of how they operate in transition, and how it is something that they really want to lean on as a strength of this team. But also, Kristaps talked about how easy this transition to the Hawks has been, and it was funny the way that Porzingis spoke about the ease in which he is gelled with the team. It was almost like he was surprised. He was kind of like, yeah, I didn't necessarily expect it. I didn't know that it was going to come this easy to me. But it's kind of comforting, I think, if you're a Hawks fan, to know that clearly a big piece and what this season's success rides on is how good Kristaps Porzingis is. It was funny. Dyson Daniels, we talked to him, and he was like, I knew Kristaps was a good shooter, but he was like, shoots the crap out of that thing. Like, he's really impressive. And so I think, obviously the guys are learning him, but he is learning the team. And so I'm talking about how easy this transition has been. It is really comforting. But then you get into the aspect that I think time and time again, Hawks fans find themselves being like, yeah, we knew this already, is how good of a passer Trae Young is. And that was something that Kristaps Porzingis was very quick to make mention of, is as he is trying to build chemistry with Trae, felt like it came easier to him than he kind of expected it to.
No, honestly, I could tell right away that he's looking for me, and he me and him, we have to develop this two-man game, and play off of each other, and I will try to make his life easier. And he's so smart; he will be able to read me like this, what I want to do, where I want to catch the ball, and sometimes he finds people. Even today, again, he found people in situations they don't even expect the ball to get to them, and he finds them. So he's a special basketball player, and I'm excited to play with him.
Yeah, he's finding guys when even they don't expect the ball. It's obviously, it is a big part of Trey's IQ, how he reads the game. And it's interesting that Kristaps is kind of essentially, to some extent, um, surprised, I guess, or maybe more pleasantly surprised that there's already a chemistry building with him and Trae, as Trae leaned into this a lot more last season. Not that he hadn't done it in the past, but last season there was certainly a focus on, let me get my teammates comfortable within a game, and then I'll insert myself offensively into the game. And so it seems like the same approach has kind of been taken with training camp, where Trae is, hey, let me feed these guys, let me get these guys comfortable, and then obviously I'll pick things back up and get it to where I want to be. I think it's funny because we asked Trae about these sorts of things, about acclimating himself with his new teammates, if it requires a deeper level of film study or just going through reps. And it seems as if Trae feels like, guys, this is year 8 for me in the NBA. And so, he seemingly already has an idea of how these guys have a feel for the game, and where they like the ball. And I loved the approach at which Trae kind of attempted to humbly answer that, yeah, guys, like, I'm good at this.
I mean, no, it's just I've been knowing these guys. Like it didn't take me Russ making the move to get Porzingis to know what he plays like, or Nikhil what he plays like. I've been talking to him and just been watching him for years. And so yeah, no, I mean it's just a I'm just a I wouldn't call myself I don't know what I'm very intelligent when it comes to knowing what guys like to do and what even around the league on other teams. So I know what those guys can bring.
This is something that has to be extremely comforting for Hawks fans, is to have a guy like Trae, like, for all of the ways that national media and people can be quick to criticize Trae for, well, he's not this, well, he's not that. I think it is interesting to hear even his new teammates, and I'll play a little bit and a bit from Luke Kennard, who also spoke about Trae. It's interesting to hear from his actual teammates talk about how cerebral he is, and I think that's Trae, what essentially what he was alluding to, is like, this is what I do, guys. Like, this is my profession. This is what makes me an all-star, is reading the game. And so, yeah, no, it doesn't take a whole lot of practice to figure those things out. If you recall what Kristaps was saying just a little bit earlier, I played that clip. He talked about finding guys even when they may not be expecting the ball. And so I think it in turn becomes a bit of a learning process on the new guys, new teammates joining Trae, then for Trae himself, because he kind of always does this with whoever he's playing with, whether it's on the All-Star team, as you've seen in the past, kind of some of the crazy passes and things that he's done, or it's on his new version of this 2025-2026 Hawks roster that is trying to build cohesion and learn how to play with Trae. And it's just, it's really comforting to hear how comfortable these guys are playing alongside Trae. I wanted to get to Luke Kennard, who kind of echoed a similar sentiment, and I find it interesting. It's not as if Kristaps Porzingis is sitting down and talking to us and Luke and anyone else is just sitting behind listening to their answer just to copy and paste. Like, these are separate interviews that I've had over the last couple of days where much like much like Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Kennard talked about this transition of playing with Trae and just how he seems to be a bit different than the other guys he's played with.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to play with a lot of great guards in the NBA, and obviously, for me being a shooter and being at the top of percentage-wise in the NBA, playing with great guards that have found me in different situations, building confidence in me to shoot the ball, and so yeah, I've been blessed and fortunate to play with really really great guys, and obviously now I'm with Trae, the best passer in the league, so I've definitely felt his presence. And how he can pass the ball these first couple of days. I mean, it's been 2 days, and I'm already just kind of in awe of what he can do with the ball and how he can find guys. And you got to be ready no matter what. He might not even be looking at you, and it's going to be hitting you right here. So always being ready to shoot. And I've had some really good conversations with him of how we want to play. And it's been a lot of fun.
You hear a similar sentiment from Luke Kennard about always being ready to catch a pass from Trae Young. I think you can just kind of see the excitement in their eyes. And of course, I guess to some extent, there's always going to be excitement at the beginning of the season. It's new. You haven't gotten out there. You don't have a loss on your record yet to this point because you haven't played a game that counts. And so for all of those reasons, I think there is a level of excitement, but you also understand why guys like Luke and Kristaps feel this way after just a couple of practices with Trae Young, because you see the potential where Dyson's talking about the way that Kristaps shooting the ball, Kristaps talking about the way that Trae can find him. There was a question that was posed to Quin Snyder about his use of the corners, the 3-point line, and how he uses that to his team's advantage. Like, all of these things are gelling together, much like Asa said, though, in a quicker pace than what happened in college. And we'll get to see it play out very, very soon as the Hawks take on the Houston Rockets, or their version of the first preseason roster on Monday. It'll be fun. I'll be with Steve Holman for that one to get to just kind of see this first taste of, I don't know how many minutes everyone is going to get. Hopefully we'll get to see everyone. Kind of depends on how Quin Snyder wants to run the preseason. I imagine, though, on the flip side of things, with Kevin Durant in year 17, 18, something like that, who knows if he'll be out on the floor for the Rockets. And so it obviously is more about just getting reps out there on the floor and probably a pretty short stint for the starters, but to just get a first bit of taste to see for ourselves. The one difficult thing that is the case for us media who cover the Hawks is when it comes to training camp, it is different than the NFL. It's different than spring training with Major League Baseball. We don't actually get to see any bit of training camp. We just kind of hear from what the players talk about. We get to see clips just like you guys do on social media. I actually made a little bit of a fool of myself because I saw the Hawks posting about there being some initiation with Kristaps Porzingis and him taking a charge, and it seemed like maybe not as much a true initiation as the initiation is much more for the rookie players. And so we'll get to see Asa, we'll get to see Nikola Jurisic, and Ellie. I'm gonna butcher his last name, so I'm gonna skip it. We're gonna get to see those guys go through their initiation, but for the veterans that are joining this team, Maybe not any true initiations as much as catching a charge for Kristaps Porzingis. Yeah, so we haven't been able to see them ourselves, and so I'm excited just as much as you guys are for that first preseason game, just to see if we get any more understanding of how Quin Snyder might want to build this team out and play them out on the court. One final thing that I wanted to touch on that I thought was really interesting from Quin Snyder, as a lot of these, I say a lot of these, there's only been 2 so far, these media sessions with Quin. We're trying to learn what he is trying to kind of do with this new version, this different version of this team, and part of this is something that we've talked about when it comes to Trae Young, but I don't know that we've actually gotten to see it play out on the court, which is Trae Young not having to initiate the offense all the time. Now, obviously, he doesn't initiate the offense when he's not on the floor, but there is certainly the way that this Hawks team has been built in the past. There was such a need for Trae to do everything offensively, it felt like, when he was on the floor, and getting him off the ball became pretty difficult to still incorporate him in the offense. And I found it really interesting the way that Quin Snyder spoke about, yeah, we want Trae to not feel forced to create everything for this offense. And so by bringing in Luke Kennard, who is a ball handler and who can shoot, and actually Quin Snyder was like, we want him to shoot more, that takes some of the load off of Trae. Whereas, they tried this obviously in the past with DeJounte Murray, and it just felt clunky. Quite honestly, it didn't feel like those guys could coexist at the same time, and one could take a step back while the other initiated the offense, and vice versa. I think the other aspect of this is not only Luke Kennard, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who has experience playing backup point guard with Anthony Edwards in Minnesota, and then getting guys like Jalen Johnson the ability to handle the ball more, getting guys like Dyson Daniels the ability to handle the ball more. Just the overarching theme that Quin Snyder is looking to get this offense going, and it not always having to be, hey, Trae Young, go get us a bucket.
I think it's a big deal for Trae, where he's not in a position where he's feeling like he has to create everything. We still obviously want him to do that. He's unique in that regard, but for him, for him to continue to play that way, it's not how he's played, I think, the majority of his career. And we still want him to have the ball in his hands and things like that, but particularly given the way that teams are guarding him now, they're picking him up 6 feet further out than they did 4 years ago. The people that are guarding him are roughly 4 to 5 inches taller than they were 4 years ago. I'm serious, too. So the NBA game has changed, and it's important for players to evolve, and for us as coaches, to continue to try to put our players in positions where they can be successful.
Yeah, I found it interesting for Quin to lay out, hey, guys are guarding Trae 6 feet further up the court than they were in times past. And those guys who are guarding him are often 4 to 5 inches taller, because you've got guys who are able to switch a lot more than what we've experienced in the past with basketball. And I love the way that it feels like Quin Snyder is able to evolve, because he's been asked questions already this past week. I think it was at Media Day about, kind of similarities with Rudy Gay and Kristaps Porzingis. And I think there was just an attempt to draw conclusions based on having that size. But Quin was very quick to be like, tell me what's similar about those guys other than the fact that they're tall. Because I do think not only their body types different, but just their play styles are so different. And quite honestly, I think Kristaps fits better with the version of the NBA that things have transitioned to, where he can stretch the floor and kind of play in different roles, and play with Trae where Trae doesn't feel the need to constantly have the ball in his hand. As Quin mentioned, though, it's not like we're trying to take the ball out of Trae Young's hands, but for Trae to be more efficient offensively, adding shooters, adding guys he can pass the ball to who don't feel the need to immediately put the ball back in his hands and say, hey, figure it out. It feels like a big thing with this team is they now have guys who can get their own shot versus Trae having to set guys up to, okay, now I can pass it to you and you can shoot the ball, which is obviously going to free up the offense and hopefully lead to more points getting scored by this offense, who has clearly been able to in times past score the ball at a high clip, but maybe not always defend the ball at a high clip. I think obviously with what Dyson continues to bring and will evolve into, hopefully, and grow more, and then adding Nickeil Alexander-Walker to this mix. And I think, as much as the offensive Kristaps Porzingis has spoken about, I think, knowing what he can bring, rebounding the basketball, and obviously when Jalen's healthy, him being able to crash the boards as well, certainly an important aspect of this game. And as I've mentioned earlier, I'm just ready for actual NBA basketball to get played, whether it's the preseason or not, just to get to see some of this play out in real time, and pick up, see if there's any tendencies that we didn't expect that play out in front of us in real time. Of course, that game on Monday, the Hawks playing the Houston Rockets, and I'm going to do something that I feel like as a podcaster might make me a bit unprofessional, because I should probably know these things off the top of my head, but I quite honestly I don't. So that's an 8 o'clock tip off for the East Coast on Monday, which means I'll be with you guys on Monday at 7:30 for pregame to get you guys ready for the Hawks and the Houston Rockets in that first preseason game of the year. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Atlanta basketball. Ooh, don't want to get any copyright issues. Atlanta basketball with Caleb Johnson on YouTube, on the Odyssey app, on wherever you find your podcast, all of those sorts of fun things. You can find me on social media at ATLJohnson18. Feel free to hit me up with any questions you might have, anything you want me to discuss on the podcast that I haven't already. It's only been 4 episodes, so there is plenty of things that we haven't touched on yet that we certainly will in the future. But yeah, go do all the things that make my bosses very happy. And until next time, this is Atlanta Basketball with Caleb Johnson. Y'all have a good one.